while.
Yes. It is going to be one of those days, isn't it? Really?
Yep.
This is a bit of a first for us. We're weekending.
We are, actually, aren't we?
I don't believe we've done a
we haven't done a weekend
recording before.
Oh, it's a relaxed affair.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturdays.
Yeah. Anyway, this is slightly belated because we've done quite well of getting these out once a month so far this year and roughly around the same time, but we're slightly behind on this particular one, but only just. And we have, we're cutting across genres left, right and centre, really, with this podcast, really, aren't we? Because we've got some country folk from the Civil Wars, we've got some groove metal.
Groove metal?
I believe
is that what it's called?
I believe that's what the particular subgenre is. Yeah. From Five Finger Death Punch.
Oh.
We have some boy band.
Boy band.
The Backstreet Boys are back.
Backstreet's back. I thought I'd get that in early.
We then have some gypsy punk from Gogol Bordello. We have some American indie from Speedy Ortiz, and some UK dance, I guess, from AlunaGeorge.
Yep.
So without further ado, we should get on to the Civil Wars.
Yep.
A second album called The Civil Wars.
I thought it was the second.
And an album that's probably created as much kind of publicity due to the civil war, seemingly between the two members, as well as the actual the album since mid-tour European tour last October, I believe it was. Within an hour of their Roundhouse gig, which I happened to be at, they posted the tweet saying they were parting due to internal discord and irreconcilable differences of ambition.
Oh gosh,
which I think is a great.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Most people seem to think that it was John Paul White that was the instigator behind this rather than Joy Williams, but no one seems to know definitely. There seems to be no immediate chance of them burying the hatchet, at least when it comes to going out and playing live again. But most of this album, I think, had been recorded by then, and they did get back together to finish it off.
Right.
But I believe there was still some frostiness, shall we say?
Oh right. Gosh.
So, with that in
mind... With all that in context.
With all that in mind...
Yeah.
They have a #1 American album, straight in.
Yeah.
As it came in 2 weeks. But, yes, so the Civil Wars. Over to you.
Well, I'm quite shocked, because I actually thought... I thought the chemistry across the record is definitely there between the two of them. It's a very enveloping record. It's very warm. It's an easy listen, but I don't mean that in the usual degenerative way that we talk about easy listening.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was a very sort of pleasant listening experience. And as you say, some classic American folk, country, western riffs running through it as well. Standout tracks for me, well, it's all kind of, but again, all kind of this muchness, but all very, very good quality lyrical, ballad storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, as there was a gig, and I was a big fan of the debut album, Barton Hollow. I can't remember how I first heard of the band, but did get into them quite early on in the UK sense, and before they suddenly started to get traction both here and in the States. In fact, I think Adele heard one of their songs famously,
right?
And I went, "Oh, I want them to be my support act."
Right.
They ended up being a support act across the States and the UK about 2 years ago, and she's still a big fan of the band.
There's a combination I can't quite, but there you go.
Apparently they all got on like a house on fire.
Brilliant.
I suppose as well probably the songwriting thing kind of connects them together. I mean, Williams and White were kind of thrown together originally at a kind of almost kind of Nashville kind of songwriting competition where songwriters come round from all over the place just to kind of sit and jam and stuff, and they kind of got together in a room. The kind of challenge was you go in a room, it's almost like speed dating almost, I think, where you're going to go in a room with someone, try and write a song, come out, go into the next room, try and write a song with somebody. And they realised when they wrote a couple of songs together that actually they were quite good, and went, actually, we should do this.
Yeah.
I think the strength of them as a going concern or not going concern, it seems to be at the moment, is how well suited their voices are. I think to get
very
together,
complementary.
Yeah,
actually,
very complementary. They harmonise well and produce to give a kind of rich, thick sound, neither overpowering the other at any particular point. Both having bits where they're the lead vocal and the other one's following, and vice versa.
It's very. That's what I mean about the chemistry.
Yeah,
it feels very natural listening to them.
Oh, and when you see them live as well. Also, it came across live when they're one of the best live acts I've ever seen.
I can imagine.
And it is just them on stage together. And the first few times I saw them, particularly, you could tell that they were genuinely enjoying each other's company, feeding off each other, and just you could genuinely feel it in the audience.
Yeah.
For me, some of the tracks that show that it's off best are things like Eavesdrop. Dust to Dust, same old. The latter being quite funny because it includes the very apt lyrics, "I'll fight with you if I have to."
Oh dear!
And seemingly, they had to.
They had to, yeah.
And there's also a couple of covers on the album. There's a cover of Etta James's "Tell Mama" and Smashing Pumpkins' "Disarm."
Ah, yes.
Which follows up their habit because they've also been one of these artists have also always done covers of things. On Barton Hollow there were 2 covers that were added on as extra tracks, Dance to the End of Love, Leonard Cohen's song, and their quite brilliant version of I Want You Back by Jackson's.
I remember you playing that to me before,
which is just brilliant. So yeah, I don't think this album's quite as good as their debut album, but I still think overall it's a pretty decent record, and if it did turn out to be the last record they record together, it'd be a shame. I think
that would be a shame. I think it's one of this particular genre. It's one of the best records we've heard for a while as well. And I know we haven't had a folky album for quite some time, but yeah, certainly over the duration of the podcast, it's one of the better albums of this genre, and I heartily recommend it. What a bummer!
Yes.
Wow.
So, moving swiftly on to some groove metal.
Right.
And just so you're aware of this,
yes,
groove metal is
they've not split up, have they?
No. Groove metal is essentially kind of old school thrash metal played at a more mid-tempo pace.
Right.
Apparently.
Okay. Because I'd have just said thrash metal.
Yeah, just so you're aware.
Good.
And it is quite interesting for us because whilst we have done metal before, we haven't really tackled, to be fair, any of the new breed of proponents of the metal genre. It's always been classic artists releasing stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah, re-releases.
Yeah. So this is this band's 4th album.
Right, wow.
And as you'll have noticed, it's part 1. Part 2 is going to be out before the end of the year. I think I can say the general sound to me was very reminiscent of people like Slipknot.
Yes.
Lamb of God, and with slices of Judas Priest thrown in, which probably explains why Rob Halford appears as a guest vocalist on the opening track of the album. Singer Ivan Moody, I think it's safe to say, mostly favours the growling approach to singing.
I can't even do it.
Much adopted in the genre, and kind of akin to listening to Animal from the Muppets fronting a band, except perhaps not as exciting as that sounds. But what's really a shame, actually, is when Ivan does decide to sing.
Yes.
He does actually have a good voice.
He has a classic rock voice, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's got big, beefy...
Sort of big, kind of ballady voice.
Yeah, we'll get onto the ballads in a minute. So it's an album that veers between growly, angsty, so songs like You, Dot Your Eyes, Burn MF, and, well...
It has a really catchy chorus, I agree with you.
And then it kind of veers to, dare I say it, kind of Nickelback.
Yes. That's
on the ballads.
Yeah, the ballads are Nickelback.
Yeah. Which is quite weird.
And there's is it End This Way or Diary of a Dead Man? There's one right at the end there.
Diary of a Dead Man when he's speaking.
Yeah.
I quite like that.
I quite like that. Very good. But there's another one a few tracks earlier, perhaps it was even Anywhere But Here. where he does actually say it begins as a ballad.
Yeah.
And it's only when it hits the chorus it goes, back into the growling! But it is actually a ballad, and I thought, this is alright, this actually.
Yeah, it's a straight up. I actually quite like the opening track.
Yes, yeah, similar effect actually.
Yeah, so that's quite good. I quite like the Diary of a Dead Man at the end. Like I said, which says has this
spoken word
thing, but actually lyrics are quite good and musically works quite well. Over the last couple of days, it has to be said, burn MF, and for people listening, MF does stand for
what you think it stands for.
Is just so cartoonish and stupid that I have to say I love it, and it's
quite likeable.
And I was singing it earlier.
Yeah, no, it's very likeable.
But the biggest crime on the album is their massacre of one of my favourite LL Cool J songs. They do a really awful version of Mona Says Knock You Out.
Yes.
Which, I mean, truly awful version.
I enjoyed it.
Really? This is the end of the podcast. We're splitting up now.
That's it.
Whatever that was.
Whatever it is. Whatever the Civil War said.
I can't even really say it. No. Irreconcilable. I haven't even had a drink today, and I still can't say it. So yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is, it's an interesting listening experience. I have to say, the growl thing is not a thing that particularly I warm to particularly.
No.
But they obviously do have some talent, and a couple of the songs I quite enjoyed.
It's very enjoyable.
But I wouldn't be going out of my way to see them live, or particularly to check out Part 2.
No. I think I'd happily give Part 2 a miss. But it was an enjoyable record. Lyrically.
It made me smile.
It made me chuckle a few times. It's quite self-referential in places.
And he just liked the swears.
Because
it's a very sweary album.
Very sweary album,
yes,
but
there'd be multitude of stickers on this album if it was the parental guidance thing.
Yeah, but you probably don't hear half of them anyway.
No. Yes, they're growled.
Yeah. No.
So, moving swiftly on, we move on to the Backstreet Boys. The return of the Backstreet Boys.
Wow, what a segue.
And in a world like this, I think it's the first album in a while.
Yeah.
First album.
How long has it been?
I'm not sure. I did look it up and then forgot to write it down. I think it's their 8th album.
Right.
And I think it's the first with all the original members since about 2005, 2006.
I said it felt like 10 years or so since anyone had mentioned them.
Yeah, so I have to say up front that I Like It That Way, whatever it's called, song, is one of my favourite songs of all time. So, with that in mind, Pete, in a world like this, what kind of world is a world like this?
It's a painful world, Scott. Yeah. You know me, I like my pop music, I like my cheesy dance tunes. I didn't like this album. I don't think you expected me to, though, really, did you?
No.
What I find with this album is that as we said, there's been a good 10-15 year gap between the peak of their powers and the present day, and yet here we are in 2013 with a Backstreet Boys album that sounds like a Backstreet Boys album from 10 or 15 years ago. And
only not as good.
Only not quite as good. And as a mate of mine pointed out, surely they're all 10 or 15 years older now as well.
Yeah.
And yet it still sounds like a bunch of young, frolicking guys. Young jocks in a band, you know.
Yes.
And you just think, well, what I'm hearing doesn't quite equate with what I believe I should be hearing, if that makes sense. Well, I suppose what it comes down to is that when boy bands, certainly on this side of the pond, have... sorry, I'll start again. I'm not going to do that silly accent.
You're not going to do accents?
No, I'm not going to do accents. Certainly on this side of the Atlantic, the boy bands that we know and love in the UK sort of gone away for their 10-15 year hiatus, and they've come back man bands. And I'm thinking. I mean, take that. Obviously, the lead on this, but there's been Westlife and Boyzone as well. They've gone away as these sort of young, frolicking, cheeky chappies, and they've come back grown up. As again, I have to attribute this comment to a colleague. They come back a bit M&S.
This is very true.
As opposed to Topshop.
I would agree.
Yes. Whereas the Backstreet Boys, it still sounds like they're in Topshop. Or Next, or whatever the hell it is nowadays.
I don't know where they are. It's
yeah.
This is one of those weird albums. The title track and opening track I quite liked. I thought,
yeah,
it's all right.
It's all right. It begins okay.
Yeah. Perfectly pleasant, catchy slice of pop. And at that point, I was thinking, this might not be that bad. But that's not really what happens, is it? This is one of those kind of records, I think, that kind of gives blandness a bad name. It's soulless, insipid.
Yeah.
You got, the second track, the third track's called Permanent Stain.
Yeah.
I swear, listening to this record more than a couple of times, you would have a permanent stain. It's a level of blandness that's almost offensive.
It gets blander the further it goes on as well, somehow, because it's insipid to start with.
Yeah, and you've got that attempt at various things. So you've got the two ballady, acousticy things, which are quite painful. Madeline, particularly, is just
again
dreadful.
A 17-year-old kid straight out of One Direction singing that. I can buy it.
Yeah, you've got Trust, which sounds like bad Ollie Murs. Don't believe I just said that, but it does. And yeah, in a week where Morgan Spurlock's documentary of One Direction has just come out, and I remember us reviewing the One Direction album and actually thinking it was perfectly fine for what it is.
Well, yeah.
And in fact, up against this, it's positively the White Album.
Yep.
I mean, it really is.
No, really, I completely get what you're saying. It's a shame, really. That I think they've missed a trick because, as you say, the original lineup is back together. And yes, I was discussing this at work, and yes, the feedback certainly from my female colleagues was more positive. Oh, really? Are they back together? I was a fan. Which I think if you troubled listener to buy the record, you'd be disappointed.
I think that's definitely the case.
It's not the great Take That style comeback, which is a shame. So Backstreet ain't back.
No, they ain't.
All right.
So moving swiftly on to our fourth disc of the day, and I think it's the third album from the gypsy punk band Gogol Bordello, Pure Vida Conspiracy.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't. Every time I see the word Vida now, I always think of Coldplay.
Yeah, it's a shame.
And this doesn't sound like Coldplay. No,
this is the furthest thing from Coldplay.
Essentially, the band have taken adopted the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" approach to this record. Because I own the last couple of albums, demonstrated by the opening track "Re-Rise Again," which is a pretty much perfect example of what this band is about. It kind of encapsulates the whole thing, really. It's kind of part Sicilian wedding band, part Pogues, part tongue-in-cheek thrash folk band.
Thrash folk.
And like that.
I like that.
Yeah. And it's just an enjoyable alternative party record.
It is.
Really.
It's a giggle.
Yeah. You've got great kind of pirate-inspired songs and lyrics. So kind of In the Way You Name Your Ship, which is just fantastic. And John the Conqueror, also great fun.
Principessa.
Yeah. And in the Way You Name Your Ship, it's got the great line, "If you taught your parrot to stutter." I really like. And also on the song "Other Side of the Rainbow," there's the also line, "I've seen the other side of the rainbow and it was black and white," which again I thought was just a brilliant piece of writing. So for me, if you're already a fan, this won't disappoint you. Whilst it doesn't really capture the brilliance, perhaps, of the first album, Gypsy Punk, it's an enjoyable record that, it's good for parties, good for weddings.
It's good summertime record.
Yeah,
actually, great for parties. You slip this on in the background, and it's just got such a happy vibe running through it, with lots of strange Mediterranean or even Russian accents.
Yes.
Yes. No, it's a really enjoyable record. You mentioned John the Conqueror and The Other Side of the Rainbow. Re-Rise Again was another favourite of mine. And Malandrino. And it's all very accented. I said I wouldn't do accents. It's all very accented, and it's just an absolute barnstorm. Barnstorm of a record.
Sticking in America, we move on to some indie. And debut album by a band called Speedy Ortiz, who I believe is essentially a woman called Sadie Dupree's band. She was kind of a solo artist and decided she needed a band, so just grabbed some people together, essentially, for all accounts. But for all intents and purposes, it's kind of her baby, as it were. And I think it's safe to say this, sound-wise, revisits the 90s.
I was going to say, this is very much a 90s record, but unlike the Backstreet Boys, it's you know, it really harked back to some of those female. I was going to say female. I was about to describe a rock chick as female. No, I'm saying.
You heard it here first, people.
Shock horror. Rock chicks might be women. No, it's took me back to some of those female-led bands. Great bands of the 90s. I'm thinking of Hole. I know this doesn't sound like Hole,
yeah,
but do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's got that sort of indie vibe to it.
Breeders and
Breeders.
Throwing mooses.
Even Skunk Anansi crossed my mind at one point. You know, which is a bit out there, but it's that sort of rockin' 90s all-girl group. And a really enjoyable record. Highlights again, well, quite solid all the way through. Quite a short record. No sooner it started, I felt it finished. I quite enjoyed Gary.
Yeah. Tell one reason I like Gary. Gary has a pause.
Yeah.
I love songs that have pauses.
A song with a pause. And it just drops off. And it's just I quite like that. And again, I think that's a 90s thing as well. Songs coming to abrupt ends and then starting again. So unlike the previous record from the era, which we've heartily dismissed, this was a very enjoyable record, and one I feel that I should give another couple of listens to at least.
This is one of my. I love this record. In fact, I'm already thinking that it's one of my favourite albums of the year. Actually.
Good lord!
I know. This was a cracking surprise to me.
Yeah, it surprised me too.
I said something to you. I was hearing bands like Belly, even male-fronted bands, the Pixies,
Echo Belly. That's who I was thinking of. Echo Belly.
Pavement as well. It was a bit, so very much mixed things. And what this does, which is what a lot of those artists did so well, which is to make a sound that can be both visceral, but still contain a kind of inner pure pop sensibility at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And added to that, there's kind of some wit and invention in it as well. Some great lyrics in this album. Not always easy to hear, it has to be said, because of the way it's mixed. But particularly of a line in Casper where she goes, "Getting perfect marks at the Sycophantic Academy," which I just love.
Yeah.
And her anger over "you picked a virgin over me" in MKV1 at the end of the album.
Yeah.
Which I like. Favourite tracks for me.
Darker hues to that end record as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favourite tracks for me, Gary, like you say. No Below, which I love. And the opening track, Pioneer Spine. Just great. But overall, I don't think actually there's a bad track on the album.
No.
Like I said, it runs for about 30 odd minutes.
If that,
And I think this album's definitely got a very good chance of appearing in my top 5 come the end of the year.
Wow, an enjoyable record, that one.
So, just one to do, and it's one of those BBC ones to watch.
Yes.
Who we covered at the start of the year, and also we kind of covered in the last podcast because she was doing a vocal on the Disclosure album.
One of Trent Reznor's current favourite records, that one.
Really?
Really? Yep.
Okay. Moving swiftly on. Yeah, so as I've already mentioned, both in that last podcast in relation to that track, and which actually was one of the better tracks on that album.
It was one of the better tracks on that album, yeah.
But when we covered them originally, my biggest issue with this band is that I find her voice a bit too whiny. That said, however, I think half this album is quite good. I think the opening half of the album...
I was going to say, the top half of them,
the
lower half.
Holds together reasonably well. Whilst it's not particularly my thing, it's alright.
It isn't, is it?
No. It's alright. Quite enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is fine.
Yeah.
But I think as it progresses, I think the more forgettable and weaker it gets. It's like they had half an album's worth of material and then thought, we need a full album. And so, in old parlance, side 1's quite good. Side 2 shouldn't have really bothered.
I think I would be a bit fairer. I think it's I mean, the stronger tracks are on the first half. Your drums sorry with the accents again, is on there as well, which was the single, I think, from earlier this year, which we reviewed.
But I think a couple of singles are at the start.
They're at the start of the album, and the start of the album is stronger. I actually found the whole album, though, quite an enjoyable listen, and particularly after, on the second or third run through. It's quite a party album, perhaps once the crazy gypsy punk's been taken off and things are sort of calming down a little bit.
Later in the evening.
Later in the evening, it's got that vibe to it. It feels very, very London in it, you know.
Yes.
It's got a cool bar vibe all the way through it, which in this sense, because we've reviewed some albums this year where they've tried that, it doesn't work. In this sense, I think it works. It's a well produced record. It crosses dance, pop, and a little bit of soul as well. So it ticks those boxes. I have nothing really negative to say, except perhaps to agree with you that the opening is stronger. But give it a few more listens. It's a grower.
Consider yourself warned.
I've been quite succinct on this particular podcast, haven't I?
Which is good.
Yeah, it's not like me.
It means they're coming in under 30 minutes.
Hey, you can go home soon.
I was just going to go over.
No, it's all going wrong now.
But,
Yeah.
Anyway.
So what do you think?
For me, unsurprisingly, I think Speedy Ortiz is my one of the month, closely followed by the Civil
Wars. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Likewise.
Next time, don't know what we're going to do reviewing next time. Although I think we'll do the new Roddy Hart album, Roddy Hart and Loads of Fire album. Let's give them the full title.
Yeah.
And 5 others. So until then, ta-da.
Ta-da.
Check out our website at cttbmusic.co.uk. Also, follow us on Twitter at cttbmusic. The CTTV Music Podcast is a Vineland production.